Most people read the Bible as if it floats above geography, as if its events unfolded in a symbolic landscape that no longer exists. The characters feel distant. The miracles feel sealed inside parchment. The cities sound ancient enough to belong to myth. But the biblical writers were not describing abstractions. They named roads, valleys, hills, ports, rivers, and gates. They wrote about places you can still stand inside today. This is what unsettles modern assumptions. Scripture is not anchored in fantasy terrain. It is rooted in soil you can touch. The wind that moved across those pages still moves across those stones. And while empires have risen and fallen, while languages have shifted and borders have been redrawn, many of the places where biblical events unfolded remain visible. Not as theme parks, not as perfect reconstructions, but as real locations layered with history. These are not just ruins, they are coordinates, and they reveal something important. The Bible does not begin with theory, it begins with land. Jerusalem is the obvious starting point, but it is not obvious for the reasons people think. It is not preserved because it is ancient. It is preserved because it never stopped being inhabited. Jerusalem has been conquered, rebuilt, burned, restored, divided, and reclaimed more times than most cities survive, yet it remains standing. Within its walls, you can visit the Western Wall, the remnant of the Second Temple complex, expanded under Herod. You can walk the Via Dolorosa, the traditional path associated with Jesus' journey to crucifixion. You can stand on the Mount of Olives and look down across the Kidron Valley. Jerusalem is not a single biblical moment. It is an accumulation of them. Kings ruled there. Prophets preached there. Jesus wept there. The early church began there. The city does not exist as a museum. It exists as tension layered over centuries. North of Jerusalem lies Bethlehem. It is smaller, quieter, and easier to miss on a map, but the pattern it carries is different. Bethlehem represents obscurity that becomes significance. It was not a capital. It was not powerful. It was a small Judean town where David was born, and where, according to the Gospels, Jesus entered the world. Today, visitors can enter the Church of the Nativity, built over the traditional site of Jesus' birth. The architecture reflects centuries of devotion, but beneath the structure is something simpler: a cave, a hollowed space in stone. The pattern is consistent. Great stories begin in small places. Further north, Nazareth continues that pattern. In the 1st century, Nazareth was not impressive. It was a village without political weight. When Nathanael asks in the Gospel of John, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" it is not sarcasm. It is geography speaking. Today, Nazareth is a bustling city in northern Israel. Pilgrims visit the Basilica of the Annunciation, built over the site traditionally associated with Gabriel's announcement to Mary. The town still rests among hills, still removed from the grandeur of Jerusalem. Its significance was never in its power. It was in its obscurity. Travel west, and you reach the Sea of Galilee. Unlike cities, the lake has not required reconstruction. Water does not preserve architecture, but it preserves atmosphere. The Sea of Galilee is smaller than many expect. It is quiet in the morning. Fishing boats still cross it. This is where Jesus called fishermen, where he taught crowds along the shore, where storms formed quickly and frightened experienced sailors. The surrounding hills amplify sound, creating natural amphitheaters. When you stand along the water, the geography explains the narrative. It was a place where voices carried. On the northwestern shore sits Capernaum. Archaeological remains include the foundations of a 1st century synagogue and the ruins of what is believed to be Peter's house. Capernaum functioned as a base of operations during Jesus' ministry. It was not glamorous. It was strategic. Located along trade routes, it brought travelers into contact with teaching. Today, black basalt stones outline streets and walls. The layout is visible. You can trace movement from house to synagogue to shoreline. The village is silent now, but its framework remains. Not far away lies the Mount of Beatitudes, traditionally associated with the Sermon on the Mount. It is not a dramatic peak. It is a gentle hillside overlooking the lake. That subtlety matters. The sermon delivered their reshaped moral imagination. But the setting was simple grass, open sky, and sloping ground. When people visit, they notice the acoustics. A speaker standing slightly elevated can address large groups without amplification. The landscape explains the logistics. Further south along the Jordan River, you reach the traditional site of Jesus' baptism. The Jordan is narrower than many imagine. It does not resemble a vast river like the Nile or Euphrates. It is modest, winding, bordered by reeds. Yet it carries symbolic weight throughout Scripture. Israel crossed it to enter the Promised Land. Elijah and Elisha crossed it. Naaman washed in it. John baptized in it. The river represents transition. Standing at its edge today, you see no spectacle, only moving water. But transition rarely announces itself with spectacle. West of Jerusalem lies the Valley of Elah. It is an open valley bordered by hills. This is traditionally associated with the confrontation between David and Goliath. When you stand there, the terrain clarifies the narrative. Two armies positioned on opposing ridges, a champion descending into the valley floor. The geography frames tension. Visitors often notice how accessible the valley feels. It is not mythic terrain. It is farmland and open field. That ordinariness sharpens the story. Extraordinary moments unfold in common landscapes. In the Judean wilderness stands Jericho, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. Archaeological layers reveal millennia of settlement. The biblical account of Joshua describes walls falling. While debates continue regarding chronology and interpretation, the city itself remains tangible. The tell, or mound, shows stacked civilizations. Jericho represents continuity under disruption. Cities fall. They rise again. The ground accumulates memory. Nearby is Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the 20th century. The caves where scrolls were hidden are still visible along the cliffs near the Dead Sea. Qumran represents preservation. Texts copied over 2,000 years ago survived in dry desert caves. Visitors walk through the ruins of what is believed to be a sectarian community. Stone rooms, ritual baths, writing spaces. The physical environment explains why preservation was possible. Arid climate, isolation, stone and dust guarding parchment. South of Jerusalem stretches the Valley of Hinnom. In biblical times it was associated with idolatrous practices and later became a metaphor for judgment. Today it is a park area. Families walk there, children play. The transformation is striking. A place once symbolizing corruption now functions as ordinary green space. Geography absorbs history and continues. North in Syria stands Damascus, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. It appears in the story of Paul's conversion. The road to Damascus was not symbolic rhetoric. It was an actual trade route connecting regions. The city remains active, though modern conflict has scarred it. Still, its ancient core endures. Narrow streets, markets, courtyards. Damascus represents interruption, a journey redirected. What they provide is friction against the idea that biblical narrative belongs only to myth. They remind us that stories were anchored in terrain, that decisions happened on real roads, that speeches were delivered on actual hillsides, that exile moved through deserts with measurable distance. Most people assume ancient faith requires suspension of physical reality. These locations suggest the opposite. Faith moved through physical reality. The land remains. The stones remain. The water remains. And perhaps that is the quiet pattern beneath all 15 sites. Empires shift. Languages change. Borders move. But geography endures long enough to hold memory. You can visit these places today. You can stand where narratives unfolded. You can see the distance between Nazareth and Bethlehem. You can trace the path from Caesarea to Rome. You can feel how small the Jordan is and how vast the desert feels. The Bible does not begin by telling people what to believe. It begins by placing them somewhere, in a garden, in a city, in a wilderness, on a mountain. And those patterns still exist in stone and soil, not because history stopped, but because geography remains.